The parking lot was quiet that evening, the kind of quiet that makes every sound feel louder than it should be. A black luxury car rolled slowly toward the curb, its polished surface reflecting the fading sunlight. Inside sat a powerful CEO, a man used to control, respect, and silence when he entered a room. Everything looked normal until a voice shattered the calm. "Don't get in that car." The shout came from across the lot, rough, urgent, desperate. Heads turned. Time seemed to pause. A janitor in a worn uniform stood there, breathing hard, eyes locked on the CEO like something terrible was about to happen. No one understood why. But what happened next would change lives and shock the entire company. Before we dive into this powerful story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Welcome to Corner of Kind Choices, where small acts of kindness create big, unforgettable stories. Now, let's begin. Daniel Brooks had been working as a janitor at Brightcore Industries for nearly 8 years. He was the kind of man most people barely noticed. He worked the night shifts, cleaned the offices after everyone had gone home, and kept his head down. But Daniel wasn't invisible, he just felt that way. He was a single father raising his 10-year-old daughter, Lily. Every day after school, she waited quietly at home until he returned. Money was tight, but Daniel made sure she had everything she needed: clean clothes, warm meals, and most importantly, love. He always told her, "We may not have much, but we have each other, and that's everything." At Brightcore, Daniel had seen it all: big meetings, big deals, and big personalities. The CEO, Richard Hale, was a legend in the company. People respected him, feared him, admired him. He was known for his sharp decisions and no-nonsense attitude. To Daniel, Richard Hale was just another face that passed him by without ever really seeing him. But that day was different. Daniel had come in earlier than usual. Lily had been feeling sick, and he wanted to finish his work quickly so he could get home to her. As he cleaned near the executive floor, he overheard something he wasn't supposed to hear. Two men were talking in hushed voices near the stairwell. Daniel didn't mean to listen, but their words caught his attention. "Everything is set," one of them said. "The car is ready. Once he gets in, it'll look like an accident." Daniel froze. "What about the driver?" the other asked. "Already handled. Don't worry. By tomorrow, Hale will be out of the picture." Daniel's heart started pounding. They were talking about the CEO. About harming him. He stepped back quietly, his mind racing. Should he tell someone? Would anyone even believe him? He was just a janitor. People barely listened when he spoke about cleaning supplies. Why would they believe something this serious? But then he thought about Lily. What would he want someone to do if her life was in danger? Without another thought, Daniel dropped his mop and ran. By the time he reached the parking lot, the black car was already there. Richard Hale was walking toward it, his phone in hand, completely unaware of the danger. That's when Daniel shouted, "Don't get in that car." Everyone stopped. The CEO turned slowly, confusion and irritation crossing his face. "Excuse me," Richard said sharply. Daniel ran closer, out of breath. "Sir, please, you can't get in that car. Something's wrong." "I overheard," they said, "it's not safe." Security guards immediately stepped in, grabbing Daniel by the arms. "Sir, do you want us to remove him?" one of them asked. Richard looked at Daniel carefully. There was something in his eyes: fear, yes, but also honesty. It wasn't the look of a man trying to cause trouble. It was the look of someone trying to prevent it. "Wait," Richard said. "Let him speak." Daniel struggled to catch his breath. "I heard two men talking upstairs. They said the car was set up, that it would look like an accident. I know it sounds crazy, but I swear I'm telling the truth." The parking lot fell silent. Richard glanced at the car, then back at Daniel. For a moment, he hesitated. This was a man who trusted logic, evidence, and control. But something about Daniel's urgency felt real. "Check the car," Richard ordered calmly. The security team moved quickly. Minutes felt like hours as they inspected the vehicle. Then one of them stepped back, his face pale. "Sir, you need to see this." Inside the engine compartment, hidden beneath carefully placed panels, was a device. Not something that belonged there. Not something harmless. It was real. Richard stepped back, stunned. Daniel had just saved his life. The next few days were chaos. Police investigations, internal reviews, media speculation. The two men Daniel had overheard were quickly identified and arrested. The company was shaken to its core. But what shocked everyone the most wasn't just the incident, it was what Richard Hale did next. At the next company-wide meeting, every employee was called into the main auditorium. People whispered nervously, unsure of what to expect. Richard walked onto the stage, looking more serious than ever. But there was something different about him. Something softer. "I stand here today because of one person," he began. "A man many of us have passed by without a second thought." He paused, scanning the crowd. "Daniel Brooks." Murmurs spread through the room as Daniel, sitting in the back, looked up in shock. "Daniel, would you please come up here?" Nervously, Daniel stood and made his way to the stage. He felt every eye on him. This wasn't his world. He didn't belong here. But Richard smiled at him. "This man saved my life," Richard said. "Not because it was his job. Not because he had to. But because he chose to care." The room erupted into applause. Daniel stood there, overwhelmed, unsure of what to say. Richard continued, "For years, I've led this company focusing on profits, growth, and success. But I realize now, I've overlooked something far more important: people." He turned to Daniel. "You reminded me that kindness doesn't come from titles or positions. It comes from the heart." Then, to everyone's surprise, Richard made an announcement. "Effective immediately, Daniel Brooks is no longer our janitor. He is now the head of employee relations." Gasps filled the room. Daniel blinked in disbelief. "Sir, I don't think I'm qualified for that." Richard smiled gently. "You're more qualified than anyone here. Because you understand what it means to look out for others." Daniel's life changed overnight. He moved into an office he never imagined he'd have. People who once walked past him now stopped to greet him. But the biggest change wasn't the title, it was the impact he could make. Daniel made it his mission to ensure no one in the company felt invisible the way he once did. He created programs to support employees, from mental health resources to financial assistance for struggling families. He listened. He cared. And slowly, the culture of the company began to change. Even Richard changed. He started walking the floors, talking to employees, learning their names. He became less of a distant figure and more of a leader people could connect with. One evening, as Daniel was leaving the office, he saw Richard standing by the parking lot, the same place where everything had changed. "Funny, isn't it?" Richard said. "This place." Daniel smiled. "Yeah. It really is." Richard looked at him thoughtfully. "You didn't just save my life that day, Daniel. You changed it." Daniel shrugged modestly. "I just did what anyone would do." Richard shook his head. "No. You did what a kind person would do. And that's rare." That night, Daniel went home to Lily, who ran into his arms the moment he walked through the door. "Daddy. You're on TV," she said excitedly. Daniel laughed. "I guess I am." He looked around their small home, feeling a sense of peace. Things were better now, but what mattered most hadn't changed. They still had each other. Kindness doesn't require power, wealth, or recognition. It doesn't wait for the perfect moment. It shows up when it's needed, most often from the most unexpected people. Daniel Brooks was just a janitor. But in one moment of courage and kindness, he reminded an entire company and all of us that doing the right thing can change everything. So the next time you have a chance to speak up, to help someone, to care, take it. Because you never know whose life you might save, or how far your kindness might reach.